Good afternoon, and thank you so much for taking the time to learn a little bit more about Parker Dewey and how we work with universities nationwide to help connect their students, their employer partners, and other stakeholders to these micro-internship opportunities. My name is Kristen Schrader, and we're excited to share with you a little bit more about some of these different engagements and ideas in hopes that this can be directly supportive of your students and possibly some other initiatives that you have coming up. So just a couple of housekeeping things in case you have to hop early. Yes, we're recording the session, and yes, happy to share with you the slide deck so that you can circulate it amongst others that might find it to be helpful. So that you know a little bit about my background and role as well is I too come from a university career services background. So been at 4 different universities, various career services roles. So definitely understand the space and some of the challenges, especially that your students have been going through this past year and a half or so. And the take-home message for all of this is that we are here and happy to support everything that you are doing to help your students and, again, possibly other stakeholders in any way that we possibly can. So don't be a stranger if we can help. Also, don't be a stranger during the session today because we do have the chat up and running and happy to answer your questions as close to real time as possible. So please keep me busy and make sure that this is going to be directly answering all of the different questions that you have before our time is through. So with that being said, so you kind of get a sense of where we're all going today, first, we'll start off with some commonly asked questions. So how we define micro-internships and just some various nuts and bolts of how the platform works from both the student and the company's perspective. And then we'll turn our attention to the second half, focusing specifically on some tactical ideas for how you can implement this micro-internship concept to support your students and, again, possibly other stakeholders, and so just some specific ideas from universities nationwide and how they're using micro-internships. So we'll got 2 key parts, and how you can get started will also be addressed throughout the conversation. So that being said, what is Parker Dewey and why do we even choose this name in the first place? Well, above all, we are a mission-driven organization, with that mission being to try to help bridge the gap from college to career as fairly and equitably as possible. This is not a new concept, this idea of a micro-internship. That is our space. So we invented the idea a little over 5 years ago, and it's not something that was a result of the pandemic by any stretch of the imagination. So we've came up with the idea and really the idea behind the company in general, the name. So Francis Parker and John Dewey, those of you who may have studied or done some research in experiential education, those names probably ring a bell, as they are the 2 founders and key researchers behind some of the early ideas and research around the importance of experiential education. That is why our founder chose the name Parker Dewey, is just to really help understand the fact that what you're doing in the classroom is fantastic, but let's put it to work so that learning can become even more meaningful. And then hopefully that can help students make a more informed decision of what is the right fit for them upon graduation. So we're a Chicago-based company, and we've connected thousands of students to these opportunities with organizations large, small, for-profit, non-for-profit, government. And when I say students, this is also inclusive of those who've already graduated. So if you are in touch with folks who've completed their degrees and are still trying to figure out the best fit for them, certainly they're welcome to utilize these opportunities and take advantage of them as long as they would find them to be useful. We've been in a bunch of different publications. You can click on the links in the slide deck if those would be helpful or of interest to you. But let me now talk about how we define micro-internships. Because there's other definitions of other organizations out there, but the key things for us are short-term, paid, and professional. And so I'm going to dig into each of those points as well as the fourth one in a moment. But these are all project-based opportunities, generally between 10 to 40 hours, sometimes a bit longer, sometimes a bit shorter, but that is where the vast majority of them fall. They are all paid and paid fairly. That is something that is fundamentally important to us as an organization, going back to our mission of trying to create a more equitable pathway for students from college to career. We fundamentally believe that unpaid work While it might be valuable opportunities for professional development, it still is not equitable for students who can't afford to work for free. And so that is one reason why all of the opportunities on our platform are paid. And that is one of the primary vetting criteria that we look at when evaluating whether or not a project that has been posted is actually a good fit or going to be allowed on the Parker Dewey platform. We vet these opportunities, every single one individually, based on whether or not the opportunity is appropriate for a college student. Is it a professional opportunity? As you can see on the slide, that means similarly to what students will be doing in an internship or that first job after college. There might be something a little bit more advanced, like if they're a graduate student and just completed a master's or even professional degree. But most of the projects are going to be appropriate for students who are in that early stage of their academic journey, freshmen, sophomores, juniors. Those are all great times for them to explore what types of opportunities are going to be a good fit for them. And those are the types of projects that busy professionals oftentimes need an extra set of hands. And so those are the kinds of things that you'll frequently see on the platform. But going back to our vetting criteria, the other fundamental important piece is, again, the rate of pay. These projects are all fixed fee, meaning that the company who posts the project, they set the amount that they are willing to pay, and then they indicate roughly how long they think that the project will take, so how many hours. Typically, that translates somewhere between $15 to $20 per hour, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, and recognizing the fact that cost of living and the going rate for internships is significantly different based on a variety of different factors across the country. Cost of living, the educational background of the student, engineering, finance, et cetera, can oftentimes have a much higher rate of pay than projects for students in other majors. So those are some of the factors that come into play. But they're all fixed fee, meaning that if it takes a student a little bit more than the time that's posted or a little bit less, the rate of pay does not change. So it encourages students to be interested in the project, and they can see up front how much they're going to be paid, and then decide whether or not it's worth their time, the project's of interest to them, and so they know up front what would be expected of them and how much they would make, and they can then opt in to apply if they wish. You'll see a little bit more about this in the next few slides. That leads me to the last point that I want to make, and you see on the slide, is that we've seen these in all different industries, all different areas of the organization, and all year round. And the other piece to know is that most of these opportunities are remote. And that was something we were seeing even before the pandemic. Over 90% of the projects pre-COVID were remote. And now, of course, that has just expedited and accelerated over the past year and a half, that we've all seen how much you can do and not physically be at an actual location. So students are doing these at whatever hours that they have available from their college dorm room or their home or wherever they happen to be. So most of them are asynchronous, and they can just fit into this schedule of busy students, no matter what other things that they might be juggling. We find that micro-internships work extremely well for students who already have a complex life. They might already be working. They might already be students who have a lot of classes, heavy academic course load. They might be student athletes. No matter what other things that they're juggling, these opportunities can fit into their schedule, and students can then self-select if that is something that they're interested in and want to pursue. So the types of projects vary significantly. These are just sampling of some of the most common types of projects that we see on the platform. And you'll notice that they're broken out: sales, HR, IT. This is not to say that only students who are in those academic majors would find these projects of interest. Quite the contrary, in fact. Some of our most successful micro-interns have come from liberal arts backgrounds, and this gives them a chance to explore and to help them understand, what is a sales job? How is that different from marketing? What is HR? How is that something that I would be interested in, and so on. And projects like data cleansing, report writing, analyzing, interpreting data, things like that are done in all different academic departments in all different areas of organizations, including fields like the STEM majors, even the students who are interested in more technical types of programs. You can imagine that there's data and report writing that can be done in literally any type of academic major. Same thing with these micro-internships. Now, there are some projects that are a little bit more sophisticated in IT or in finance, and areas where, yes, it does help to have more of a background in those areas. And once again, students will see up front what sort of skill sets are required so they can know whether or not they'd be qualified for those opportunities. They'll see up front also a project description so that they can see what would be expected of them, what is that final deliverable, the hours, the rate of pay, etc., so that they can then self-select if they're available, interested, can they get to that location if it is an on-site opportunity, or if it's remote. They'll see all of that up front. Which then leads me to a very common question, of course, top of mind, so an issue of cost. And that is, we are an open platform. So think of us not too dissimilarly to LinkedIn. Most schools will promote LinkedIn as a great way to help students with networking and building their online profile and brand. Not too dissimilar when working with us. We're a free and open platform. Your students and recent grads are welcome to participate and engage in these. They are all paid opportunities as well, as I mentioned already. Now, if you are interested in being more strategic about implementing these opportunities on your campus, then yes, happy to discuss how we work with universities, and that too is at no cost to your institution. And again, I'll dig into all these different benefits further on in the presentation. But we are a mission-driven organization above all, and so we do not want to have whether or not a student attends school and what location, et cetera, be a barrier for them to participate in these opportunities if they would find that to be helpful. So now I'm going to share a little bit about what things look like from the student's perspective, and then I'll turn our attention to the employer's perspective. So first of all, again, not too dissimilarly to LinkedIn or really any other job board that you're already using on campus, Handshake, Simplicity, or again, whatever platform. Students create an account, doesn't take too much time, not too big of a lift for them. They can copy and paste from their resume if they wish. But we also, because going back to our mission of being free and open to everybody, we do not integrate with any of your university IT system. And so if your students want to participate, fantastic. But everybody who is on the platform has chosen and wants to be there. And so it's up to them what email address or whatever data that they choose to include in their profile. And then from there, they upload information about their experience, their education. They can upload a resume if they wish. They can upload other supporting documents, such as samples of their work from class projects and so on, again, if they so desire. And then their profile is ready to go. Now, a few things to know about this is that a lot of this information is optional. So if a student doesn't want to include any information about their experiences, doesn't want to include their GPA or things like that, that's completely up to them. Also, things to know about the experience section in particular is that it is a catch-all category. So meaning that students who would want to put extracurricular activities, internships, part-time jobs, athletics, community service, all of those things, or none of those things, can all be in that section if they wish. The descriptions under each of these experiences are very succinct. So think of this as kind of like a Twitter version of a student's resume, where they can just give a quick snapshot to the hiring manager of what that student's background is, so that then the employer, the individual, can then see whether or not that student is a good fit. Going back to the education section, the reason we don't require their GPA, and you'll see on the company side, is that we don't require major or GPA, and there's no filters for companies to find students based on those criteria. Again, in our mission of making sure that these are equitable and accessible to students, and looking at the research that the GPA and major are not a very good indicator of a student's ability to perform the job. We don't have any filters for students to be weeded out based on their major and or GPA. And this is allowing companies' minds to be expanded a bit. They're considering students who may have a GPA that's just a bit lower than their normal cutoffs, but who are going to be able to do a really great job. Or the students who maybe are not quite in the whatever right major means to that particular employer. This is giving them a chance to try out a project that, again, might be a really great fit. And that's helping those companies to identify maybe a school that they've never recruited at, students who may come from backgrounds that are just a bit outside of what they normally would be have on their radar. This is really allowing those students from these different backgrounds to be successful. We're really proud of the fact that over 80% of micro-interns who have completed projects on our platform have come from some sort of underrepresented background. And so having the lack of filters for major and GPA from the company side has really helped to design that. And many companies are using micro-internships as a way to connect to students that they're missing, those students that are not on their target school list, or students that are already so busy doing other things, working or athletics or whatever, that they just can't do a traditional internship. Most students still need jobs as well when they graduate. Most of them are not going to become professional athletes or may not want to do that part-time job forever. And so this is really allowing them a chance to still build their professional repertoire of experiences. Now, once they have their profile created, they then can see those different projects that are currently available. That left side screenshot is what it looks like from the student's perspective. So real succinct, real straightforward. We're not a job board that has thousands of projects at any given time. But a few things to know about how things work in the micro-internship world is that it is a very, very fast cycle time. So meaning that the students who are successful with these opportunities are logging in every day or two, seeing what's available, seeing what's of interest, and then applying right away. Now you'll see that on the left side screenshot, there are projects in a featured projects section. Those are projects when the company who posted it has said that they only want that project to be visible to students from either certain schools or from certain affiliations. And affiliations mean those nonprofit organizations that are also mission driven and in this college to career space that we are in, that are also really interested in helping to support their students from various backgrounds and engage employer partners in posting projects for their students. So some examples of some of the affiliations that students can add to their profile and then thus have additional opportunities available to them is Dell Scholars, the United Negro College Fund, Bottom Line, the Winning Edge, which supports student athletes, the Dream.us, which supports undocumented and DACA students, etc. But regardless, even if there aren't projects that are featured for your students at this given time, they'll all see all of those open up micro-internships, and the significant majority of projects are open and visible to everybody. Now, when they see those projects that are of interest, they can click details, read a little bit more about the project, which is what that middle screenshot looks like, and then you can see the description, the hours, the rate of pay. All of that is available for the student to see up front. And then if they want to apply, they go in and click apply, and then they see one or more short answer questions, like that right side screenshot, that the students have to answer in order to be considered for the opportunity. Now, there's always at least one question. The company who posts it can add additional questions if they wish. And something to know about that application question is that that is not only the application, but that also typically will serve as the interview for the student as well. So typically companies don't do interviews for micro-internships just because these projects are so short term. They typically just don't take the time to do that. Now they can reach out to a student that has applied if they wish and set up an interview, but that tends to be the exception more than the norm. Another thing to know about these projects is that many times companies will choose multiple students to work on the projects. Now, when that happens, the students still work independently. This doesn't become group work with total strangers, and the students still receive the full amount of that project is posted for. But in those cases, the students or the companies then receive multiple perspectives from different students about whatever that project might be. So in that middle example, for instance, social media content calendar, that's often a project that we frequently see is divvied up into multiple students. So they might choose, say, 2 students and say, okay, you're going to focus on the first half of the year, and then the second student might focus on the second half of the year in developing the social media content. Or similarly, they might divvy it up into 4 different students and then have them work on 3 months or whatever the case may be. Now, once they're selected for projects, what happens next? Well, students receive an email first from Parker Dewey that says, congratulations, you've been selected to work on this project, when here is the company point of contact that you'll be working with. So they'll have that point of contact at that organization, and then we provide them with guidance and success tips and so on to help them with what to say to the company. We recommend right away to the student, reach out. Here's what you should say in that email when you're reaching out to the company, just so you can have some sort of kickoff conversation and ask whatever questions that you have about the project. Typically that happens over Zoom or some sort of conversation like that, and sometimes the company might just go back and forth via phone or email. We also serve as a liaison between the student and the company, and are just there to help support however we need to be involved. But quite frankly, we usually try to stay out of the way. And usually it's just between the company and the student working independently, and the student working largely on his or her own in order to execute the project in whatever time frame that the company has outlined. Now, we do share some success tips, such as some different resources that we have on our website. We encourage them to reach out to faculty, alumni, mentors to help get some insights on the projects. And those definitely can be really effective ways to have students engage with alumni and other mentoring platforms that you may already be working with. Now, after the project, we also then share with the students some best practices, such as how to update their resume and or LinkedIn profile, what they should say about the project, and we encourage them to stay in touch with the company, because micro-internships often do turn into longer-term engagements, whether they be additional micro-internships or internships or even full-time jobs without those companies at the organization. But this is also a great opportunity for students to reflect. What do they like? What do they not like? And so on, so that they can then make a more informed career decision. And what we have seen from the reports from students who have completed these micro-internships is that students are far more likely to not only have a job upon graduation if they've completed micro-internships, but they are also far more likely to stay with that company that they've selected upon graduation and just basically make a more informed career decision, having completed more micro-internships. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Wouldn't we all wish we have had an opportunity to just gain a few more data points when we're an undergraduate student or a graduate student, just to make sure that we understand a little bit more about ourselves, what we're good at, what we like, so that we can then feel more confident, so that we make that right decision whenever we are finishing our degree. That's what micro-internships are. That's what they do in the context of the student. And one other very common question that we get quite a bit is around international students. And so here, can they complete these? Yes, but because these are paid opportunities, they do have to have the appropriate work authorization. So usually, because of the short duration of these projects, international students are completing these via OPT, but they might be eligible for CPT depending on the project, depending on the rules at your institution. They might be able to do it via work visa. And obviously, this gets to be very complicated or very individualized. And so what we encourage students to do, and what they'll see a message about when they're selected for a micro-internship, is that they should reach back out to the International Student Services Office on their campus in order to confirm that they are eligible for these opportunities. And once they've done that, we're happy to support the student in providing such as an offer letter for that student, like what you see on the screenshot on the slide, that outlines the specifics of the project, so that the school has the information that they need in order to process this. And certainly we're happy to work directly one-on-one with your International Student Services Office if they have additional questions about these opportunities and what the kind of work the student would be doing. Another question that comes up quite a bit as well, this actually just recently came up in some NACE conversations, is can students complete micro-internships for credit? And again, depends on the school, but here are a few examples, and you can dig into these websites further on if this would be helpful. But essentially, it requires faculty approval in most cases, and the micro-internships have to meet a certain number of hours at most of these institutions. But again, it does depend on the school. So now I want to turn our attention to the company side of things. But once again, if you have questions, please feel free to send those to the chat, and I'll do my best to answer those as quick to real time as I possibly can. But how this all works for companies is, first of all, quite a bit different from Handshake simplicity, in that we are the employer. Parker Dewey is the employer of record for all of these different micro-internships. We handle all of that admin. So we are structured as a consulting firm. We invoice the company. They pay when they've selected the student that they want to work with. And then we take care of everything else from there. So the students are on our books. The company doesn't have to worry about any of that. Which then leads to the middle section, okay, risk. And that's obviously top of mind for these organizations. And essentially, the students sign a strict non-disclosure agreement. The company who has selected them owns the final work product. Parker Dewey is also under a very strict non-disclosure agreement, and we guarantee the company is satisfied with that end result. And so what that means is if a student successfully completes the project, and then whenever the company is not happy with that deliverable, we work it out on a case-by-case basis. But what we've seen is that upwards of 98% of micro-internships are completed successfully because students are highly motivated to do a really good job. And we also very carefully vet these projects to make sure that they are appropriate for a college student, so that it's not that a company is hiring somebody with 10+ years of industry experience. We make sure that these are projects that are ones that a student can be successful at with minimum supervision. But again, life gets in the way, students have things come up, and not every student is as reliable as we would like. Again, having worked in higher ed for a while, I totally understand. And so in those situations, we work directly with both the student and the company to make sure that the student is treated fairly. If they did the work, we'll still pay the student, assuming that they did put a good faith effort in completing the project. But from the company standpoint, we will either give the company a full refund, or they can choose a different student to work on the project, whatever they prefer. Again, though, that doesn't tend to happen all that often. What tends to happen far more frequently is that the company wants to hire the student. This company is so satisfied that they ask, can we do additional projects? Can we do hire the student as an intern, full-time role, et cetera? And as a mission-driven organization, we want that to happen. And so we don't want to get in the way of that, and there's no conversion fee when a company does want to hire that student to bring them on to their organization as an intern, full-time employee, or what have you. Now, great question that just came through. Do students receive feedback about their performance from employers? So yeah, it's a really, really great question. And one of the ways that micro-internships are quite a bit different in that these are projects that are typically completed within a matter of a handful of weeks. And so while the supervision and mentorship that students would receive during a full scope 10+ week internship, it's going to be very different in a micro internship. That is certainly a key difference. And it really depends on the company, how much or little the company engages with the student. Yes, the company does receive or have the opportunity to give feedback to the student at the completion of the project, but we share with the student and with the company as well that we recommend that they check in with each other, and we follow up with the company and student as well throughout the project, just to make sure that if everything is still on track. That one of the best practices we share with students is a few days into working on the project, send the student a sample of what work you've done so that you can make sure that you're meeting their expectations and so on. So yeah, different from certainly a 10+ week internship, but I hope that answers your question, Leslie, and please, if you have additional questions on that, let me know. One other question that certainly I'm sure is top of mind, I know it was when I first heard about Parker Dewey when I was running experiential education at a campus in the University of Maryland system, is how does payment work? So Parker Dewey, how do you make money? And quite frankly, as you can see here, we try to be as transparent about this as possible, but it comes from these individual projects. And so the payment, the paper trail and all of that, how that works is a company posted project, which they can do at no cost on the platform. We only invoice them once they have selected one or more students to work on the project. And then we hold that payment in escrow while the student is completing the project. And then once the project is completed, we pay the student 90% of what the company pays us. And that 10%, that covers our costs of what you see here. And so that, with this having a student on our books, obviously that is incurs a cost on our end. And so that 10% keeps lights on here at Parker Dewey, but that is it. And also going back a couple of slides here, just so you all know and are totally transparent on how this all works from the student's perspective, is that what the students see is what they would ultimately receive. So if you look at that middle screenshot where the rate of pay in this case says $360, what the company pays in this case is $400. And so that's what we would invoice the company. And that 90% is $360, which is what the students would receive. And that 10% is $40. That's what we retain to cover our costs for that specific and particular project. A question that came through, is there any data on micro-internships leading to internships or full-time roles that you're able to share? Yeah, I've got a few case studies actually further on in the slide deck, so stay tuned. We'll give you a couple of examples of those later on. And we're happy to share with you also the data around your students' engagement with the platform. You'll see some of that information in just a moment, as well as the companies that they've worked with. And if the companies told us, yeah, we want to hire the student full-time or for an internship, et cetera, we'll share that with the school as well. So going back again to companies' perspective, pretty straightforward and simple to post a project. And so they fill out the information about their project, and then they have the option to limit that project so that it's only visible to one or more schools or one or more of those affiliation organizations that I mentioned previously. There's no cost for them to post a project, and they set the scope, the cost, the amount that they're willing to pay, the hours, all of that, so that makes it real straightforward and simple. If you are an employer relations staff member and want to check this out yourself, you're more than welcome to create an account so that you can see how all that works from the company's perspective. Same thing if you work with students. And in fact, I really recommend that if you are interested in promoting these micro-internship opportunities to either your students or to your employer network. It's the best way to find out how all it works and what it all looks like. One aspect, though, that makes us very different from, again, simplicity, handshake, etc., is that we are not a resume database. What I mean by that is that when you, or if you were to go and create an employer account, you can't see any students. In fact, you can't see any students until you post a project, and then the only students you can see are those who've applied to the projects that you have posted on the platform. So if you do create a student account, just note that that experience, again, you're not sharing any of your data or information unless you were to apply to a project. And then same thing with companies' perspective, you'll only see so much unless you go on to apply, to post a project. Now, if you do have a project that you've posted, or what companies see is only, again, those students who've applied. They have the ability to filter by school if they wish, by organization, by degree, etc. And then when they are viewing what students that they're interested in, they can click details, and what they see first and foremost are those short answer responses. Like what I mentioned before, those short answer questions students all have to fill out when they're applying. They see that first, and then they can see the rest of the student's profile. And so those of you who are working one-on-one with students, just know that this is a big tip for success for your students, is to make sure that they really take the time to answer those short answer questions with thoughtful, specific responses of how they'd be a good fit for that particular project. How would they approach that project? Some students will choose to copy and paste the exact same response for all of the different projects. And quite frankly, that's a waste of time, because those students who are selected tend to log into the platform every day or two, apply to all projects that are of interest, and customize their responses to those short answer questions as much as they possibly can. The early bird gets the worm with these micro-internships. So students who are most persistent are the ones who are successful in these opportunities, irrespective of the school that they attend. This is a very egalitarian process and platform. The students who are really serious about these opportunities log in frequently, they apply to lots of projects, and then those are the ones who are ultimately successful. And we have students who are essentially creating their own internship program on demand with multiple companies doing multiple projects all year round through these opportunities. But again, the formula is very, very simple and straightforward. They're persistent, and that's key. Again, if you have questions about success tips for students, hopefully that helped to answer some of those. But we unfortunately do see answers like this. Why do you think you'd be a good fit? Well, I'm a hard worker, or my resume has no typos, or how you'd approach the project, I use Google. Again, not a good answer. And unfortunately, we do see responses that look like this regularly, or they have littered with typos or whatever, and those are making it very, very easy for a company to say, yeah, the student doesn't have what it takes for accomplishing the project that I need. Now, to the question that came up earlier, what sort of feedback do students receive? It's a short, succinct project, feedback form that companies fill out. The students, yes, do see this when they're logging back into the platform, and they can see some comment sets as well as some more of a Likert scale type of feedback. Real quick and easy for companies to complete. Companies also have the ability to provide feedback that is confidential just to Parker Dewey, so that if they have questions or concerns about how the process works or anything from that perspective, that's not something that students would see. It's not relevant to the students, or if they just had some concerns about the students' performance. But again, that doesn't tend to happen very often. Students really, really do a great job with these opportunities. And one other question that comes up quite a bit is, in this mass ecosystem of different college career fair or career services platforms, how do we fit in? Because I recognize that there's a lot of different places that students can go in order to find jobs. And quite frankly, having worked in student affairs and career services specifically for a while, I'm thankful that there are so many options, particularly in this last year and a half where students have faced so many obstacles. And so, yes, there's lots of different options, and certainly Handshake Simplicity and the different gig platforms, alumni platforms, they all have their place. The big differentiator, as you can see here, is mostly how we work with employers, that we provide that administrative support. I just had a question from a school earlier today that said, you know, this company posted a project that really should have gone on Handshake. Why did they post it with Parker Dewey? I don't know the specifics for that particular project, but what we frequently see is that companies are using micro-internships, one, as a way to connect to students that they're missing. So these short-term projects work really, really well for those students that just can't do anything long-term. Two, because the student behavior for micro-internships is far different than what how they're using Handshake and Simplicity. Students are engaging with micro-internships and with Parker Dewey daily, whereas with Handshake, Simplicity, and some of these other platforms, they're only really using them when they are looking to get a job. And again, I've worked with these platforms. I use them myself when I was in college. And so, it makes sense. Whereas, micro-internships, they're year-round on demand, which leads me to the third benefit, and that is that administrative support, which is particularly advantageous for those organizations, maybe particularly smaller ones, that just don't have the need for an intern or a full-time person, or the idea of having to handle the HR, the payroll, all of that. It's just so much easier to post it as something that's unpaid. But then you have some legal and other issues, and of course, equity and access issues that alumni may not think about, or these small businesses may not really have on their radar. So again, we handle all of that just as a way to create these more equitable options for students nationwide. And then the gig platform. So again, this is certainly an option for students, but we are firmly in that space of providing professional opportunities. So things that you're not going to find things like walk my dogs, babysit my kids, or anything along those lines. These are professional projects for students who want to get experience to help launch their careers. And then companies are using micro-internships in Parker Dewey in a different way than they're using Upwork and Fiverr. More money is going to students with the micro-internship model that we have. We don't charge any conversion fees or anything like that. Our mission is to put as much of that income into students' pockets as we possibly can. So again, all of these platforms have a place. We just do a bit of a different approach than some of these others. So hopefully this is helpful just to kind of see how all this works, because again, we're trying to provide a place that gives students a chance to stand out. And so to the question that came up earlier around some micro-internships leading to longer-term engagements, here's just 4 case studies, and there's additional examples on our website and success stories from students who have completed these different opportunities, who have come from various backgrounds, such as first-generation college students or international STEM students, or students who are just not able to cut above the noise because their GPA was too low, or they weren't attending the quote-unquote right school or had the right major, et cetera. And so micro-internships, as we see, just really a great opportunity to provide a win for all of the different stakeholders that we work with. So students gaining experience, paid experience to help them build their careers. Companies connect with students that they may be missing, or are able to engage in new and different ways. And then you at your university are able to support your 2 primary stakeholders as well as your alumni in new and innovative ways. And as you'll hear about in just a bit, you also have an opportunity to generate revenue for your office if that's something that is a priority or of interest. So now I'm going to shift gears and focus on how we work with universities. So as you can see from this map, we are pretty much nationwide, across almost all of the states. One thing that I'm most proud of with this, though, is that all of these different partnerships have come through word of mouth. We don't do any direct marketing to schools. And so whether or not we work with one school or another, that is completely by happenstance. And we're honored and happy to support your efforts any way that we possibly can. And if now is not the right time, no worries. Happy to help later on or whenever it would work in your list of priorities. But how we work with schools, and again, all of this is at no cost, is first of all, build out a landing page, provide marketing materials. We'll share updates around when projects are posted that are either featured for your students or have come from employers who found us via your website. And then lastly, that ever so important data, so that you understand the uptake of these opportunities amongst your students and other constituents. So digging into each of these further, Here's an example of what the landing pages look like. We've recently redesigned them based on feedback that we received from an individual who is visually impaired. And so we know that these are 100% accessible to students, even if they're using a screen reader. We'll match the colors to your branding guidelines, and you can replace these images with photos of your campus, your students, or you can stick with the stock images, whatever you prefer. You also can customize the language that your students would see and whatever content that you like to have your students or other stakeholders see before they sign up. So for example, that right side screenshot, the school, in this case, University of Florida, asked us to add information about micro-internships for international students. So we provided them some examples of the language, they shared what they'd like it to say, and then we can update and customize that section for them. Provide marketing materials so that this isn't a heavy lift for you to get this up and running. The platform's already in existence. That landing page can be up and running within 24 hours of receiving whatever logo or images that you want featured on the page, and we can always update and customize it further at any time. But then we'll provide you with toolkits, emails, blog articles, etc., social content, and so on, so that you can customize it as you wish, but you can get this program up and running within 24 hours if you'd like, and we have had schools complete it in that time frame, or you can be more systematic about it and more strategic, again, however you choose to do and engage this. And we have blog articles and newsletters and webinars, etc., to help you with keeping an eye on best practices and other ideas and ways that this might fit into some of your other priorities. And then lastly, data. So you can understand how many students have signed up, their level of engagement. We'll also share with you the employers and their feedback for those who worked with your students. And then we're happy to share, if you reach out to employers and or alumni, their level of engagement with those organizations as well. How many projects they've posted, the point of contact at that organization, et cetera. And we're finding that schools are using this as a way to offer companies a new way to engage with their students year-round, or a new way for their alumni to give back to students in a new and innovative way that doesn't require that alum to have the ability to write a 4 or 5 figure check. The way that they can put a project on their company credit card and still connect with a student from their alma mater. Which leads me to some ideas, some specific tactical ideas for how you can build a successful program on your campus. And we have schools who are doing all of these things. We have schools who are just focusing on their students, however you'd like to do it. But we have always seen that the most successful schools who have the most successful students tend to engage their others. We just share micro-internships with these other stakeholders, their alumni, their networks, their local small businesses, et cetera. It's the same way as you tell your companies that want to recruit your students to go on to Handshake or Simplicity or whatever platform that you're using for jobs and internships. Well, share those folks that micro-internships are yet another way that they can connect with your students all the time, all year long, nationwide. And so that's the best way to help your students be successful. So let me give you some specific ideas. So first of all, engaging your alumni. We've built out pages like this Colby College or UNC Chapel Hill page for dozens of our university partners who have specific interest in engaging their alumni, their parents, or other friends of their university. We'll let you know when the projects are posted so that you can share it with your students. You can reach back out to that alum or friend to let them know about that opportunity. Colby College was particularly an early adopter in providing these opportunities, and they reached out to us back in April of 2020 saying, this pandemic doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and we want to help support the class of 2020 with as many opportunities as we possibly can. And so they reached out to all of their alumni, parents, and other friends, and had lots of different projects that were posted right away for that class of 2020. And we've seen schools use this to engage others, such as employers, recruiters, small businesses, et cetera. And so this page is very versatile. The way that these list of projects on the right side screenshot works is if I'm a company or an alum or whomever, and I have a lead generation project, I just need a quick lead generation information about that project's pre-populated. I can make whatever edits that I want to that particular project, but it makes it very, very quick and easy for me to get a project up and running with very, very minimal work on my part. Also know, as I mentioned already, that companies can feature their projects. So these alumni don't have to worry about students from other schools applying. They can make it exclusive just to their alma mater or to an organization that their partner is interested in. And from the student's perspective, they'll see that listed first before they'll see all of those other additional opportunities. But then we also have programs like this one that we're running this summer with Swarthmore, where they have career services funding that they are allocating towards micro-internships. And they've been doing that for the past year, offering these alumni opportunities to engage and connect with their students through the summer and even throughout the academic year. And the career services team is funding these micro-internship projects, and then they're hosted by Swarthmore alumni, parents, friends, etc. They reached out to us a couple months ago to help run their program this summer for a variety of reasons, but a lot of which being that they've realized that handling the invoice and payroll on their end was a heavy lift for their team, and so we're handling all of that for them this year. And again, it's a real straightforward model that continues to be that 90-10%. So 90% of the project's cost goes towards the student, and that 10% again covers our cost, including all of the administration and the setting up these different websites, et cetera, for this particular program. We also have schools that are engaging their employer partners, and this is becoming a really interesting way for these universities to feature some of these key employer partners that have made a vested interest, have a strong interest in building their brand on campus. So Purdue University College of Liberal Arts, for instance, they run an event called their I Love Liberal Arts campaign. And as part of that, they've engaged some of their key employer partners in posting projects for their liberal arts students. And so that page that you see on the left, that is what their student sign-up page looks like during that event, so that the students will see those companies right from the get-go and will know, oh, when I log into Parker Dewey, these are the projects I should be looking for and the companies I should be looking for. And if I want to learn a little bit more about Microsoft, Pepsi, or Cerner, or whomever, I can click on the link and read a bit more about that. And all of that data is shareable to the companies so that you can really share with them how much traction and interest these different websites have received from these students that have engaged with micro-internship opportunities. And that also then can become valuable data that you can market and perhaps even generate revenue with for these key employer partners. We have different schools who are able to generate revenue by offering micro-internships as part of an employer sponsorship program or package. So in the most basic example, this you can see on the left side of the screen, a $5,000 sponsorship. You go to your key employer partners and say, okay, for $5,000, you can not only receive the branding, like what you see on this Purdue page, but you also can have 5 micro-internships with our students at your organization to really get a chance to get to know the quality of work and get to engage in a really meaningful way with those 5 students that whomever you select. Gives the busy hiring managers an extra set of hands, allows them a chance to really get to know students at your school. Oh, and by the way, that $5,000, that can fund, that $2,500 of that will fund the micro-internships. The other $2,500 goes to your school, goes to fund whatever you would want to use sponsorship money to help supplement and augment your budget. Now, the sponsorship package can be scaled up, down, or however you wish, whatever 50-50, 40-60, 90-10. We have a nonprofit partner right now. It's more of an 80-20 model. Another nonprofit model that we're working with is offering a sponsorship as a way to help augment or attract the companies that have allocated their budgets elsewhere over the past year or so, when some of the different packages for sponsorship just weren't as appealing in the virtual environment. And the micro-internship piece has allowed them to re-engage those companies who have gone elsewhere and to offer them something new and a new and innovative way that has allowed them to lure back and also attract additional companies that were not sponsoring their organization previously. Now, full disclosure with all of this, so our take, or Parker Dewey's funding of this is, again, whatever portion you allocate towards micro-internships, we keep the 10% because those students are on our books because it covers our costs. But as far as setting up additional websites, programmatic data, impact reports, any sort of extra support that you might need, that is at no cost to your institution. So in short, we're happy to help if this would be useful and a nice way to help supplement some of your other initiatives. And yes, we'll definitely be sending you the slides so that you can dig into this further, and I'm happy to have a conversation one-on-one about any of these ideas. You can hear more specifics. That would be useful. Other ideas for engaging employer partners. So we've had schools like University of Iowa who've reached out to all of the different employers within their network to share with them information about micro-internships. Works really well, particularly in that off season. So before the career fair or after the career fair, when you don't have other communications related to the career fair to share with them, you can say, hey, this is a way that you can still connect to our students all throughout the year. Or as a way before the career fair, you can start to get to know students now. We have a company that's going to be launching a program before they even get on campus to try to help get on students' radar before they start going to their target schools events. And then that micro-internship sponsorship package that I just mentioned, the right side screenshot shares with you an example of one of our university partners who use micro-internships as essentially an add-on to augment their program. So again, lots of different ways to do it. One other option too is to engage your local community. And so two examples, the Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce, they reached out to all of the companies within their network. We hosted a webinar for them, had over 80 companies that attended in real time and even more that listened to the recording later on. And they had micro-internships that were posted within hours of that session. Similarly, Cincy Tech is a tech incubator located in the greater Cincinnati area. And they have a strong relationship with both the University of Cincinnati and Miami University in Ohio. And through those relationships and the faculty network that they have established, these universities are able to identify students for these different IT projects within the greater that are then hosted at these startups in the greater Cincinnati area. And it's been a really interesting partnership because not only do the university students get these great micro-internship opportunities, and again, all of those are paid, but also Cincy Tech, these startups that don't have the needs for full-time interns or employees, et cetera, because they're too small, but they're able to connect with students that are in their backyard and engage with them and do some really interesting projects. And some of these students have then gone on to do more micro-internships and even longer-term engagements after these projects because the students are able to find these great opportunities and the companies find this great talent, and they don't even need to look outside of their region in order to do that. So a few other programmatic examples. Another one in the University of Cincinnati is funded by an Ohio Department of Labor grant that they have chosen, the university has chosen to allocate towards funding micro-internships at nonprofit organizations. And so they have the students connect with these nonprofits. They're able to use micro-internships instead of full-scale internships. And that way, more students are able to get support for these opportunities so that the dollars stretch quite a bit further and fund more students through micro-internships versus longer-term engagements. And in this particular example, the way that funding needed to be allocated is all of it needed to go towards funding the student. And so the administration fee, that 10% that Parker Dewey charges, is paid for by the nonprofit. So in these examples, $111 is what the nonprofit pays. They receive 80 hours worth of work from the student. The student receives $1,000 that funds them for those 80-hour projects. So it creates a really, really nice win-win. One other element of that model that I particularly think is pretty ingenious is, and wish I had come up with it, was that University of Cincinnati tells the students, hey, pick out the nonprofits that you're most passionate about and you're most interested in, and then this university helps to facilitate those connections for the students. So it adds an extra layer of the student having more skin in the game and are really doing work that was with an organization that interests them. Another example, again, grant funding is with John Carroll University, and university in the greater Cleveland area. They receive grant funding from their Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And those micro-internships are funding, started about 6 months ago and are being hosted by nonprofits and small businesses throughout the greater Cleveland area. And all of those students have come from underrepresented backgrounds and are a part of that Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And then yet another example, Catholic University opened a Tucson branch back in fall of 2020, if you can believe, starting at college in the middle of a pandemic, but they did it. And not only did they do it, but they, as part of their opening, connected their first-year business students with local companies that they identified the students and the companies in the greater Tucson area. And best yet, those students, several of them were hired part-time after just completing these short-term projects. So it's been a really great way to have local engagement, start getting the local university's brand on campus, and then their students get that work experience right from the get-go. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. There's lots of things that you can do with micro-internships and a lot of ways that this might fit in. I've got a few suggested next steps, such as sending an email out to employers or alumni or your students. We've got some examples and templates that you can use to get started. But if you are interested in being a bit more strategic, you can request those different landing pages that I shared with you earlier. We've got a form that you can fill out, so you can choose the landing page that is of interest to you. And again, we can get those up and running for you within 24 hours, depending on the type of page and the amount of customization that you'd like. But in short, we're here and happy to help however we can. As the quote says on the slide, we can't help everyone, but collectively together we can all help someone. So hopefully these opportunities have given you some ideas of ways that you can generate options, additional options for your students to get paid professional experience. My email address is on the slide. You can certainly reach out directly if we'd like to have additional conversation. I'll send you all this related collateral later on today. Really appreciate your time though and hearing more about this, and hopefully we can get in touch so that we can support your students and possibly other stakeholders. So wishing you all the best, and have a great rest of your day.